Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Noah Kerner, CEO of Acorns, the mobile savings and micro investment platform. Noah, I'm so excited to chat with you, not only because of the success you've had at Acorns, but your journey and really what you've seen through all phases of growth. Obviously, nothing's all said and done with Acorns currently, but in terms of where you started the company and where it is today, so much has probably happened. And I would love to kind of dive into that experience and what you've learned, share that with other members of our audience as well. But before we get into Acorns and what you're doing now and what you've done so far, what were you doing before you started the company?
Thanks for having me on, Julian. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So my life started in New York City, East Village kid. I was a product of hip hop culture growing up, and I got into DJing and hip hop as a kid at 14.
Yeah.
Started doing hip hop nightclubs early, working with a bunch of artists, and had that hunger to kind of create something right out of the gate. I felt like I would be better off professionally in my life doing my own thing and pursuing my own passions and building my own stuff. So first company, 21 years old, was the first one-stop shop for hip hop on the web. And that was based on this insight that for the most part, unless you were in the major metro markets, you couldn't get access to hip hop products, turntables, fashion, all that kind of stuff. So built that, and then really just started that journey of building things that I felt like I wanted to broaden access to, or that I was passionate about, and felt like I want other people hopefully would feel the same. So started and built 5 companies, and there was a point at which it became clear to me that things I was passionate about had to be married with service to society, and I think that hit me kind of hard at like 31, 32.
Yeah.
And so thought about what are those things that where I could really contribute the most, feel passionate personally, but contribute the most. And so wealth gap, health, education, the arts, there were a couple of, and that's part of what got me here today to this point with Acorns, which is really about helping everyday Americans, and we can talk a little bit about the deal we just did, because we're a global company now, but helping everyday Americans save and invest and get smarter with their money, and provide the access to the tools of wealth making that people just didn't have before.
Yeah. Obviously, I think there's so much in terms of talk about in terms of accessibility and information and what that really enables people to do and kind of its overall impact. But obviously, just to touch, as a huge hip hop fan myself, who are some of the favorite people that you DJ'd for or were around, especially in New York City, being that it's such a hub for innovation, creativity, individuals coming together? What were some kind of fun experiences there that you want to share?
Well, the first hip hop group that I opened for was the Wu-Tang Clan, actually.
Really?
And and I from there all the way to being the DJ for Jennifer Lopez and her band, so shows, but I've worked with a bunch of artists, performed with a lot of different interesting DJs and in a lot of interesting spaces, and had the chance at a young age to do, to pursue my passion and be really creative that way. But also it was an interesting intersection of creativity and commerce. So being able to really make a good living as a young kid while doing the thing that I felt really excited about. And that was a fun time in my life. In the summer of, I think it's probably 96, but in the summer I did I spun out in LA at the Roxbury. And there was one night I was doing it was like East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah.
I was doing, spinning a lot of East Coast hip hop on the West Coast. So I was doing Biggie, Nas, this kind of stuff. And the promoter of the party came up on stage and whispered in my ear that Tupac was in the back. And I looked in the back, and he was actually throwing up like West Side.
Yeah.
So I thought, I probably better do a West Coast set. I put on like every Snoop record, every Trick, Far Side, Souls of Mitchell, all like a
Nate Dogg, RG got thrown in there, I'm sure.
All that, It was just a good time, a good experience in my life to have to be able to do that.
But it's so fascinating thinking about obviously, I don't know if I'm making loose ties here, but it's interesting thinking about hip hop as a vehicle for innovation, culture, and really kind of having its heartbeat on the current interests of a younger population. And thinking about all the other companies you ran and that access to a younger demographic, especially with Acorns, what does it mean to be within that kind of ecosystem, understanding what's going to be valuable, what's going to be a low barrier to entry for people who are seeking out innovation, seeking out new experiences, seeking out other, I guess, a common experience. Like, I feel like hip hop, maybe whatever's the popular form of music or genre at that time, kind of injects this innovation and creativity and this genuine curiosity. How have you kind of thought about giving access coming from a place like New York, and how are you actually able to give people that access without giving them that experience? What are some vehicles you can communicate that?
I talk a lot about this to people who, how did you move from that kind of world into the business world or startup world, and the experience of performing in front of crowds like that all the time, night after night, small crowds, big crowds.
Yeah.
It had a lot to do, for me, it had a lot to do with understanding what moves people, how to connect with people, how to capture a crowd, how to lose a crowd effectively. And you didn't know this at the time, but effectively all the things that go into building products, building companies, building marketing, it's all about connecting with consumers and understanding human psychology. So that was it was night after night of being tapped into the pulse of people and their movement. So that was a really good experience from the perspective of being able to build things later. And I think so much of creating, whether it's companies or products or marketing campaigns, is about having a good instinct about what moves people.
Yeah.
You asked about connecting to hip hop, but being authentic.
Yeah.
Not trying to be something, not trying hard, creating things that feel honest.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about Acorns that I take a lot of pride in, is it's a very authentic, honest brand. It's accessible. It's not try hard. We're not trying to connect to any particular audience. We're trying to be accessible to everybody.
Sure.
And so we speak in a particular kind of language, keep it really simple. And I think I think people feel that when they interact with the company, that.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about. Obviously, Acorns has expanded into many different offerings and many different products, but the initial idea of using this idea of change that we all kind of are it's like a common experience. Think about a change jar growing up and things like that, but really putting that into an investment vehicle that compounds over time. It was definitely an innovative idea at the time, using that money, using that spare amount to then start to build wealth. And what was the initial kind of catalyst for that idea? What inspired that idea to then start growing into other ways to give people access to financial kind of, I guess, systems that they didn't have access to before?
Well, Acorns is very much about making big decisions small. And we like to say, make big decisions small, don't make people do math. So spare change is everywhere around you. It's in the jar and in your cards and your couch cushions. It's in your pocket. It's so it's something that everybody can relate to. Yeah. And investing is complex and something that people can't relate to as well. So breaking down that barrier was fundamental early on. And spare change is that thing that cut through and made it easy for people to understand that they could participate in this system that hadn't been accessible to them. So that's really important. I think being able to connect into people's lives in a way that they can relate to, especially when you're talking about something that's really complex for the majority of people. So spare change was core to making investing something that that someone could say, oh, I can participate in this too. I have spare change, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then making it really easy to then actually invest the spare change and understand where it's getting invested, and the concept of portfolios and diversification. These are more difficult ideas to explain and understand. So automating that experience was very fundamental to this. Yeah. So it was that kind of simple idea of spare change, and then combined with automation. So somebody is immediately investing without even really knowing that it's happening. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I invested 25 cents and I
Right.
invested $3 and it starts to add up and little bits start like with tiny acorns grow into mighty oaks. So it was that tiny amount of money. And then through the power of compounding, you can see that become
Yeah.
something more than it was.
How are you able to change the psychology of people in the sense to think about investing as not putting or paying extra into something that you don't have currently, but using what you have and kind of almost just like moving it into a different vehicle to actually grow? Was it through education? Was it through campaigns, go to market strategies? I feel like at the time when you did that, not a lot of people were thinking about ways of using what they had and just putting it in a different location versus thinking in a way of purchasing, say a 401k or putting money aside, losing out to maybe gain long term. It's almost like you're working in tandem with that individual. What were some helpful ways you educated your audience on the difference in that kind of psychology towards investing?
Well, on the subject of education, we decided that education was going to be a fundamental foundation of Acorns from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so not in the way that typically companies think about branded entertainment or branded content or content marketing or this content and education is a core part of the Acorns product experience.
Yeah.
And making people smarter, making sure people understand money is fundamental to the essence of Acorns, to the DNA of Acorns. By the way, that hadn't been done before in financial services. The history of financial services is often about obfuscating information and whether purposely or not, things being complicated. So people really don't understand a lot of these. People don't really understand even how to read a credit card statement. Right. So that idea of making sure people understand has been fundamental. And we carry that through and everything. We like to say educate at the moment of decision making.
Yeah.
Make sure before someone is about to take an action, they understand what they're going to do. While they're taking an action, we're educating them about what it means. So if you think about things like market performance or compounding, while that's happening, make sure people understand. And then after the fact, make sure people also understand what they did and what the results are of that action. So I think, and that has a lot to do with the values and mission of the company.
Yeah.
That it is really important to us that people get smarter, that people, we like to say, grow their knowledge.
Yeah.
And then again, this is when you prioritize things like that as a DNA, part of the DNA of the company, I think that cuts through.
Yeah. Thinking about, of course, like Acorn obviously was one of the first to kind of do this whole micro investing kind of activity, but there's other companies alike. Like there's Digit recently got bought by a company. I can't remember the acquirer, but there's other kind of micro investing, micro savings platforms. But why have you been so successful? What part of what Acorn does? Is it the actual vehicle of the way you micro invest? It's the education. What would you kind of pin your finger on why you've been able to not only capture a large audience, but also maintain that and retain that audience and expand into different product lines, being that's extremely hard to do. And it's harder to go from 0 to 1, but it's even harder to go from 1 to 10 and beyond. And what makes your company unique in the way that you've been able to keep this kind of a really loyal customer base and grow these products on against the competition, being that they do something similar?
Yeah, I like Ethan from Digit. They got bought by Opportune.
Opportune,
that's the company.
Yeah.
So, and they built a good product too. I mean, I would say it's a couple of things. It is back to the point of authenticity. It's about building a brand, communication, product experiences, design experience that's honest and authentic and people can relate to, and staying true and consistent to those things. I think prioritizing education, like we just spoke about, has been really core. That we want to make sure that our customers understand what they're doing, and that we're there in the tough moments when there's market volatility, that we're constantly educating. And we have these mantras like every downturn in history ended in an upturn. And it's not about timing the market, or it's not about timing the market. It's about timing the market.
Yeah.
I think simplicity has been really important. Focus has been really important. I think being focused is probably the most important thing in business. So staying focused on the core, the design of the product, right? The kind of the feel of the product is really important. And I think to be good at consumer, you have to balance obviously a great product with great marketing. And so focusing on both of those things and excelling at both of those things has been fundamental. And having those things feel like one, the product and the marketing feeling as if they're one, has been really important to the success of Acorns. So those are some of the things.
Yeah. Thinking about the way expanding into different product lines, how are you able to kind of build other products that still kind of were surrounded in the core philosophy of what Acorn does, which is that access to opportunity, investment vehicles, information? How are you able to define what avenues to go in rather than say, hey, okay, now we have a credit card, now we have savings account, now we have bankings, and we're pretty much similar to a traditional institution, but you do it in a different way. And I'm curious on how you think about product expansion, how to stay around that core philosophy that Acorn kind of conceived in its initial build.
We don't have a credit card, which is part of the point.
Right. Yeah.
It was the answer to that question is about staying core to the purpose of the product, which is making sure everyday people are saving and investing for the long term. So when we launch a product, it has to come back to delivering on that idea and delivering on that outcome. So you talked about, we don't do credit card. We do have a spending product,
right.
But the focus of the spending product is to make sure you spend less and save more. So that's really the central, as opposed to this idea of a drop-down menu of options where you're just sort of launching products that have no real connectivity, don't come back to a central purpose for the customer. And I think aren't clear to the customer, like, why is this good for me? It seems like this is good for you. If I use this, you guys are going to make a lot of money. But why is this good for me? And what's the central unifying principle of this? And so at Acorns, everything comes back to that idea of saving and investing, and products get put through that filter. If we're going to launch this, it better unlock that possibility.
Yeah. One thing I was really excited about in terms of the Acorn ecosystem was when you shop at certain brands, you could earn kind of equity into the company. And that's a pretty cool idea in terms of how it really aligns with what we see trending, which is people being really connected with brands in terms of the decision making they make, where they source their product, kind of all through the product life cycle. What does it mean to have that investment with that kind of brand loyalty? And what kind of ways are you partnering with brands to show them the value of this investment kind of vehicle, being that these individuals are going to become increasingly more loyal as you offer them more incentives? How's that changed in terms of consumer behavior and consumerism, in your opinion?
We have a feature that allows customers to earn bonus investments when they shop. So it was taking sort of the cash back idea and turning it on its head, and we call it cash forward. And again, this comes back to saving and investing. So when you shop with Nike, or when you shop with Cricket, or when you shop with Chevron and Acorns, we automatically invest a part of a portion of the transaction into your Acorns account. So it's again, everything you do coming back to saving and investing for the future. And we have thousands of brands. When you shop with them, you get bonus investments right into your Acorns account. It's another way to capture small amounts of money and put them into your future.
Yeah. Tell us, for the audience, share a little bit about the traction that's been exciting up to this point, but also there's been some recent news in terms of expanding the company and what you're launching. I'll let you kind of go through it, but tell us a little bit about the traction you've seen thus far and what's particularly exciting about the next phase of Acorns.
So starting many years ago, we decided that we wanted to expand Acorns into the family system.
Yeah.
And the idea that the idea of financial wellness for the whole family is a really important and powerful concept. That's when you think about the largest market in the world, sort of the family constellation. And then when you think about the largest white space in financial services, it really is that market on a global basis. And it hasn't really been served, and companies haven't built a full offering for kids, teens, parents, and everything in between. So that's where we started down that road. We launched Acorns early in 2020, which is our saving and investing account for kids. So our parent customers can easily do that. You can invite the whole family in to participate, uncles, aunts, godparents, whatever, and they can contribute. And so we started down this path to serve the broader family, and then got to this place where you're thinking about, okay, what about making products for kids?
Yeah.
This is obviously a really important thing to get kids saving and investing for the future, understanding money, becoming more financially literate. And we got to a crossroads where we thought, well, either we're going to go down the path of building this ourselves, or we're going to do a deal with someone else. And we met the team at GoHenry 2 years ago. And for those who don't know, GoHenry is the number one kids money app in the UK. They had also launched in the US. They're a subscription service like us, but they focus on kids and giving kids an allowance card so the parents can reward their kids for doing chores and learn about saving and giving and all these kinds of basic money principles and activities that we think will help set kids up for a brighter future. The school system obviously has not prioritized financial literacy for kids. So this had to be taken into, GoHenry felt they had to take it into their own hand. So we just announced that we've acquired GoHenry. That means that we're now in the UK. They also have a company called PixPay, which is a teen banking product out of France, Spain, and Italy. And what we're going to do in the United States, we've just started rolling out our $9 premium tier. And that tier is basically going to be a bundle of products for adults and kids and the whole family. And I think that idea of family and money and financial wellness for the whole family is very powerful. And again, I like to say that money is a family affair.
Yeah.
And so this is how we're going to be focused. And it takes us to a place where we've got about 6 million, almost 6 million global subscribers, which is meaningful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Whether thinking about it external or internal, what are some of the biggest risks that you think Acorns faces today?
Our biggest challenge is always inertia. It's always been inertia, but it's getting people to start taking a leap and taking control of their financial future. So that's the biggest risk for what we do. And I think moving society forward from a financial perspective is overcoming inertia.
Yeah.
And obviously the macro economy, inflation, these kinds of things are challenging from a subscription service perspective, but just continue to see that inertia is the biggest, the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Obviously things are going well, but if it continues to go well, what's the long-term vision for Acorns?
The vision statement is a financial wellness system that enables everyday Americans to save and invest every day. That's the vision. And so saving and investing at the center always. But the way Acorns is going to work in the future is instead of signing up and just getting an investment account, when you sign up, you're going to get emergency savings. You're going to get spending, retiring, investing, giving, expenses, the whole sort of bundle of products that you need to manage your money holistically. And then when you add money into Acorns, it's going to automatically get allocated across the different products for you, right? So that hasn't been done. We're going to try to get the paycheck. That'll be really important so we can allocate it most appropriately. So you can imagine 5% goes to emergency savings, 1% to giving, 40% to spending, 10% to investing. And then the experience of the product will continue to be celebrating your growth, celebrating your milestones, and educating you as you go. So that's the concept of the financial wellness system. And of course, money will be allocated toward your kids as well. Yeah. So they can have a better future. They can use that allowance card, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I love this section. I call my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see where we go. So
let's go.
I love it. All right. First question is, what's particularly hard about your job day to day?
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is I feel this incredible sense of urgency to get as many people doing this stuff as possible. Yeah. The sooner we can get people saving and investing for the future, the better society will be, the more of an even playing field we'll have, and particularly when it comes to people doing that for their kids. So what's particularly difficult about my job is the sense that hundreds of millions, or billions of people are not doing this today. And I feel this incredible sense of urgency around that. And it just frustrates me all the time that more people aren't doing this. And we can't get more and more people over that hurdle. Cause I know once you start doing it, it's so helpful.
Yeah. What's maybe one or two stories of an experience that someone had using the product that really kind of changed their life or allowed them to purchase something or allocate money towards something? Any story kind of come to mind that kind of always pops up in your head when you think about what your product's been able to do for people?
Yeah. I was interviewing a woman once actually for a role at Acorns, and she told me this story about how she had used the product. She talked about the idea of saving in the background of life, and she was using the roundups. She was using recurring investment, and she really kind of had forgotten actually that to sort of the set it and forget it notion. She had forgotten that she was using Acorns and that she had it there. and she got diagnosed at one point with cancer and didn't have a way to pay for her cancer bills. And she realized with her husband that she had an Acorns account, sort of light bulb moment. And so she opened the product and realized she had a pretty significant amount of money that she had saved and invested over the years that she was able to use toward her cancer payments.
Yeah.
And we hear those kinds of stories all the time. So that type of thing is incredibly motivating, that the product can provide that kind of service for people in need like that.
Yeah. It's incredible to hear that. And it brings me kind of to this idea of scaling. I was thinking about a lot of times you can hear the kind of two buckets of founders or two buckets of leaders, those who start up a company, kind of bring it from conception and idea to adoption and to the market. And then the others that will expand that idea. We call it the builders and scalers kind of a concept. How are you able to do both? Being that kind of traditionally, there are two different types of personalities and people. What kind of allowed you to adopt yourself and your leadership kind of ability and philosophy through the different phases of the company, being that it's hard to do as a founder, taking it from 0 to 1, but also taking it from an adopted concept and expanding it. What's kind of allowed you to do that?
I'm always learning. I'm always listening. I'm always watching, always just taking everything in and remaining, I would say, remaining agile and remaining open to change.
Yeah.
I love this. The notion that you can't change your mind or you won't change your mind because you're fixing an idea or fixing a thought doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm really always just constantly learning. I like the Tupac line. I don't lose, I win, or I learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's fundamental to being able to go through the seasons of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And you're confronted by things all the time, every day, every week that you haven't been confronted by before. So if you're not always learning and always evolving and staying agile, I don't think you can move that way. I think it's particularly difficult to do anything this way unless you have that mindset. So I would say that thing.
Yeah, I guess more for an operational standpoint, is it bringing certain types of people onto the team? Is it allocating resources or structuring the team in a particular way? I guess from a foundational aspect and how the company operates, how does that change, and how does your, I guess, responsibility day to day change as that evolves?
I mean, it's a similar thing of constantly learning and in that vein, bringing on people who are smarter than you at certain things and bringing on people who are going to be better at you than you are at different disciplines, and then empowering them to take the company forward and stepping back where appropriate, but staying close to things that are core, like the brand, in my view, like the brand, the design, the customer experience. I think you always have to stay close to that when you're a consumer company and doing the kind of thing we're doing. But I think if you're always we talk about Acorns as a teaching hospital, and I love that idea and feel the same. Like I feel like I'm in a teaching hospital, constantly learning, and part of that is bringing on people who you're going to learn from.
Yeah,
and that's really important to me, bringing on leaders like that.
Yeah, how are you able to find and hire the right talent? What questions, I guess, help you identify someone that can be part of the Acorn team?
Well, interviews are just not very effective. So I mean, there's this like proven to be pretty flawed. So I do interviews, but I don't put a huge amount of weight on interviews. When I do them, I'm focused mostly on the kind of the why people make decisions. Sure. Why do you want to come here? Why do you do what you do? Why is this important to you? That kind of thing. But finding talent is really about having a wide network and doing major background checks and making sure you get the real deal about a person before you bring them in. And by the way, no matter what you do, no matter how good you are at that or how good you get, you're still going to hire the wrong people a lot of times. And so then the question is, how quickly do you act on that once it becomes an issue, which has been for me a journey, because I tend to be loyal and to people. So, but I think once if you find that you do not have the right person, you have to act quickly and make a change.
Yeah. What's the challenge that you've overcome in regards to hiring people for a company that has heavy compliance, heavy regulation? It's similar, like fintech companies, healthcare companies have a heavy burden to making sure people's information is private. What's something that's been challenging about the hiring process that incorporates the idea of privacy and making sure people's information is secure and things like that? And have you only hired in a certain particular area because of it? What would have been the limitations that has had on you?
Well, I think when you're building a startup, you have this inclination to want to hire startup people.
Sure.
And when you're building a startup in a category like financial services, which is heavily regulated, you have to strike that balance between startup people and people who have industry weight and who come from the right kind of experience. And trying to marry those cultures of startup meet financial services is tough.
Yeah.
So you have to find the right type of people on both sides of that coin. It's hard to find people at financial services who have a startup mindset. And it's hard to find startup people who have a scale mindset and an appreciation and respect for regulations and these sorts of issues you're confronted by in this category. So I think finding that balance and then marrying those cultures with a clear set of values and a connection to the mission is. So I've tried to do that. I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten to a place now where we have the right balance there. Because in this category, you want to move really fast. You want to deliver fast. There's a lot to deliver for our consumers and against our mission. But you also have to build high quality product that really works because you're talking about people's money.
Yeah.
So you can't fuck around.
Yeah.
So that's it's not move fast and break things.
Right.
It's move fast and make things that don't break.
Yeah.
So that's the balance.
Yeah. What's something you're really good at now that you wish you were better on earlier as a founder?
I'm not sure I'm really good at it. It's a work in progress. I think I'm getting better and better at it, but being patient.
Yeah.
I've always been very impatient. And so it's a lifelong process of developing more patience for people, more patience for, impatience can be a benefit, but it can also be a real problem.
Yeah.
So I think I've gotten better at it with age and experience, but I still wish I had a little more patience.
Yeah. Well, at least in the US, with the changes to like Fed now and different changes within banking and news, and there's a lot of, I wouldn't say volatility, but there's just a lot of, I think, understanding of the banking market that people weren't necessarily privy to, where they put their money, where does that money go, what are they investing in? How has the recent news like SVB and Fed now kind of changed the way Acorns does business? Or, if it hasn't, what are some ways you kind of go past those updates and continue to offer service without having to adjust so drastically?
Well, this comes back to the point about education. We do, for instance, a weekly newsletter called In a Nutshell.
Love it.
Acorns brand. But we are making sure that our customers know what's happening in money and what's happening in money now. And I think we do a really nice job of breaking down concepts and issues like what happened with SVB and the run on SVB and how that came to pass and what it means and what it could mean for your money. And also, we are the opposite of sensationalism. So you don't get that with Acorns. It's not a media business. We're not building for clicks. We're building to try to create customer understanding and elevate people's connection to money and fundamental kind of handle on how things work, so that they can be smarter and so that they feel that Acorns is a brand that they can trust.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great service we get to provide to society. Something I'm really proud of, that the simplification and demystification of what's happening out there with the money minus the sensationalization. And this is particularly important when there's market volatility,
right?
Because when there's market volatility and you read the news, you're going to withdraw your money and stop investing.
Sure.
When there's market volatility and you consume information at Acorns, you're going to stick with it, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because as we say, every downturn in history has ended in an upturn. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And in terms of like the Fed now, kind of the upgrade in that technology and its ability to kind of interact with banks and kind of its speed of transaction, but also its ability to be involved in the banking system. Does that change the way Acorns run? Have you had to consider that in terms of how the company moves money around or things like that? Has that been something that you've had to build around?
No.
Yeah.
No, Acorns was built for these times and these moments. And if I understand what you're asking, now we we haven't had to change anything in relation to what's been going on recently.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like to ask this question. If you weren't working on Acorns, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't working on Acorns, I would be working on something in the animal space.
Yeah. What in particular?
I'm really passionate about animals. Going all the way back to when I was a kid, there was a period where I wanted to be a vet. And I have this feeling that humans have sort of squandered the opportunity to manage the planet.
Yeah.
And so the question, one of the big topics of our time is going to be how do we make sure that we can preserve animal habitats and not continue destroying animal habitats. So I'm a big believer in and I have a lot of passion for the animal kingdom. So I don't want to reveal too much, but that's what I would be. That might be what I do. What if there's ever an end to the Acorns journey, I might do something in the animal space.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I always like to ask this next question because I love how founders extract knowledge out of anything that they ingest, whether it's early in your career or now. What are some books or people that have a heavy impact on you as a founder?
Well, I mean, there's obviously a huge amount. I'm a big Winston Churchill fan.
Yeah.
So he's often considered the last lion. And so his courage is my favorite character.
Yeah.
So his courage is an inspiration for me, being obviously confronted by one of the great challenges of our time. So he's always an inspiration to me. His words are an inspiration to me. The way he defines courage as what it takes to stand up and speak. Sometimes it's what it takes to sit down and listen.
Yeah.
He's always been an inspiration. Albert Einstein is an inspiration. And then I love medical books and health books.
Yeah.
So When Breath Becomes Air is a book that I feel particularly connected to.
Yeah. 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 I know we're at the end of the episode here, and I really appreciate you taking the time, but I want to make sure we didn't leave anything on the table. Is there any question that I didn't ask you that I should have, or anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to chat about this last little bit? Anything that we left on the table?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It was a pleasure, Julian.
Of course. Yeah. No, thank you so much. And last thing is, give us your plugs. Where can we find you? Where can we find Acorns? Where can we be a fan of you as a founder, but also support the product? Give us your LinkedIn, your website. Where can we be a part of the Acorns community?
Acorns.com. And also, as importantly, Go Henry. So in the App Store, download Go Henry or go to gohenry.com. It's really, I mean, we acquired the company, so I'm biased, but it's a great product for parents and kids and teaching kids the value of money. So I would recommend to anybody with kids or thinking about kids that you go get that.
Yeah. Amazing. No, it's been such a pleasure learning your early kind of career and what got you to Acorns and how you kind of view this whole innovation, creativity, what your consumers are really attracted to, and how that's kind of bled into the philosophies of Acorns, and how you've been able to really give people access to investment vehicles and savings, and in a way that was not particularly available to them before. So I hope you enjoyed yourself today on Behind Company Lines, and thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks, Julian. Pleasure. And
of course.